Hello and welcome to another edition of The Week, the show where we sit down and chew over some of the big talking points from across our region over the past few days. Coming up over the next hour, I'll be poring over the headlines with a helping hand from not one, not two, but 5 studio guests. With no sign of interest rates going up anytime soon, we'll be joined by a top independent financial advisor who will be offering us tips on how to make our money work most hardest. And when you look out of your window to see the nights closing in, the temperature dropping and the rain starting to fall, well, we've got the perfect leisure time antidote. As you can see in front of us here, a good old-fashioned board game. We'll be finding out a little bit more about the good, the bad and the munchkin, and the Dragon Queen over there a little bit later. Remember, this is your show, so if there's an issue you think we should be tackling or a point you want to make, well, just drop us a line. You can reach us on the Big Centre TV website, on Facebook, or by dropping an email to theweek@bigcentre.tv. Now, my first guest is no stranger to the headlines. She not only helps to make them herself, but she teaches up-and-coming West Midlands journalists how to follow in her footsteps. Danny Wozencroft, welcome to Big Centre TV.
Thank you.
So you're no stranger to the media,
no.
But tell us a bit about what you do and what the course is all about.
So at the moment I'm course leader for the NCTJ Diploma in Journalism at the City of Wolverhampton College. NCTJ stands for the National Council of the Training of Journalists, and that is sort of the benchmark that editors look for when they're looking to take on trainee journalists to get their teeth into the big stories of a local area. So our course is a 1-year diploma, September to June, July time, 1 academic year, and we teach in a variety of modules. They range from reporting, which is how to write a newspaper story, the structure of it, the quotes, how you're interviewing people, how to put it all together so it comes out as what you see in the newspaper at the end of the day. We teach public affairs, which is the structure of your local government, the national government, the NHS, education, planning, all sorts of things like this, the things you're going to be reporting on, so you need to know who to speak to, who's in charge of what. We also teach court reporting and essential media law, so that no one can fall foul of the law whilst they're either in court reporting on a story that's happening there and then, a case that's going on, or whilst they're outside of court in terms of copyright, confidentiality. Believe it or not, there are laws for privacy, so that sort of thing as well. We also teach video journalism. Video is something that local editors have told us is quite important these days, that if people are branching out into, whether it be online or on TV. We also teach the shorthand module is the one that people find hardest.
I did my NCTJ course back in 1980 something or other, and I remember some people, I mean, I was fortunate, my writing has always been horrendous, but I'm quite quick at doing it. So I used to, in shorthand class, I was always very good at keeping up with the dictation, and the trouble I then had was trying to decipher it and read it back. And then there were other people who had really neat handwriting, who I could have read their shorthand, but they struggled to keep up with the dictation, and it becomes an obsession, doesn't it? The shorthand side of it. People don't realise though, do they, that journalists are having to go through legal training, having to go through some pretty serious local and national government training, have to know, you know, as you say, the laws that people, I'm sure some people think there are no laws affecting journalists these days, but also shorthand. I wonder how long shorthand will remain on a course when you've got your MP3 recorders and the like.
But in court, you're not allowed to record. You're not allowed to set up anything, whether it be your phone, your MP3, to record it. You have to take everything verbatim as well. You can't have inaccuracies in a court report. So shorthand, I find, and the NCTJ thankfully agrees with me, is really, really important. We teach one type of shorthand which is called T-line shorthand, which the ongoing joke is that they invented this type because journalists were too stupid to learn Pitman's, which was the previous type. It's really important, I find, but not just in court. You know, if you're talking to someone and you don't have a recorder on you for whatever reason, you're going to have to write down what they're saying. And you're not going to keep up if you haven't got good shorthand, specifically what they exactly say. You might be able to fudge some quotes there, but I would never advise that.
Do you find that when you are interviewing potential students that you maybe are having exactly that conversation with them and they're questioning you about why do I need to learn shorthand these days?
Yeah, very much so. Shorthand is always, which is why I mentioned it last then, is always a sticking point. People say, why do I need this? What's the importance of it? But as soon as they start learning it then, it's actually, like you say, it becomes addictive. It is a brilliant skill to have in life. I write my shopping lists in shorthand now. because I can do it and it's quicker. Exactly.
And no one else can see whether you've...
No, thankfully my husband knows
to
as well, so he can read it and go and do the shopping.
I remember I used to sit at, when I was at college, I used to sit there and I used to try and take the 6 o'clock news down in shorthand and then read it back. I'd do little 30-second bursts and then a 1-minute burst, and that's the life of a trainee journalist, isn't it? Real rock and roll.
In fact, in lessons today, I was talking to my students about how they're practicing their shorthand, and they sit in front of Coronation Street and recent live episodes, that sort of thing. They sat there trying to write down what they say or listen to the radio, or my favourite is when they're on the bus listening to the conversation of the people in front of them and write it down. Obviously they don't know that you're writing their conversation down because it's in shorthand.
But that shows just how, like you say, how addictive it actually becomes. When I was at journalism college, very few universities or further education colleges were offering media studies, in quotes, as an opportunity to gain a qualification that would be relevant for the media industry. That's changed completely, hasn't it, now? And there are so many different qualifications out there. When I was in a position of recruiting journalists, some people would come with a media training qualification, which for a newspaper journalist wasn't worth the paper it was written on, was it? And that happens a lot now, doesn't it? There are media courses and there are media courses, aren't there?
There are media courses and then there are NCTJ courses, in my view, to go to a local newspaper or national, as it may be. We get so many students who've done a degree, 3 years, a lot of money as well, and then they say, oh, I couldn't get the job that I wanted because they just asked me if I had NCTJ. Creative writing, media, as you say, all these types of courses. There are many different ones, but people just need to look into what industry they want to go into and then find out what specifics are needed for that.
Because the thing is, everyone's a blogger these days, aren't they? Everybody can be a published author.
Yes.
And so that makes somehow people think that it is easier to be a journalist, a qualified journalist, than it actually is.
And referring back to your earlier comment, people don't realise that journalists have gone through this training for laws and public affairs and the structure of all these different things. I think everyone who writes things online should definitely have some sort of NCTJ training, because there are a lot of laws broken and laws are being updated now to include the internet, but people just don't realise what they're saying.
Thank goodness they're being updated, because I look sometimes, I'll tell people what they can and can't write, and then they'll see something on social media or a tweet that's been sent out and say, well, look, he or she said that.
Yeah.
And I say to them, well, look, if someone wanted to take action against that, they could, because it's defamatory. You know, it's
there are so many well-known cases. We had Peaches Geldof last year tweeting things that I'm not even going to repeat in a conversational setting, because it's against the law. You know, they just don't realise.
Absolutely. What makes a good journalism student then, in your opinion?
Someone who's nosy. To start with, you've got to have an eye for getting the detail out of someone. You spot something, go and ask questions about it. What is happening there if you're not sure? And someone who's dedicated. Certainly our course is quite intense. There's a lot of work to do in it. So you need to be able to dedicate yourself to that and put in the hours that are needed to firstly pass all the exams, and secondly write stories as well. We have a live website that we regularly update with stories by our students, but we need that updated all the time. It can be about whatever story they want to write, as long as it's newsworthy. So someone who's nosy and someone who's dedicated. I mean,
we sit here every week and we pour through the local papers, the Express and Star, the Birmingham Mail, the massive number of weekly papers that we've got in the patch, just to look at what makes the headlines, and I've been in journalism a long time, and it still fascinates me how different newspapers treat potentially the same story. I mean, we had last week blanket coverage of the opening of New Street Station and Grand Central and all of that, and they all took a slightly different angle on it.
Yeah.
Do you put all these newspapers in front of your students and say, look at all of that?
Yeah, it's always interesting to me how little students read the newspapers when they decide they want to be a journalist. So one of the first things I say is read the newspapers, whether it be nationals, locals. We get them all in. We have subscriptions to local newspapers as well. We make sure our students read those newspapers, because you can spot that there is a story in almost anything. Anything can make a story, and you can see, as you say, how different people approach it in different ways as well.
I still think, I know the newspaper industry has changed massively over the last few years, but one of the things that journalists are still great at doing is taking a human interest story about a person or a family and tugging your heartstrings with it. I mean, this one here is a typical example that I pulled out, which is the Walton advertised this emotional campaign to help a pretty inspirational dying mother who fought breast cancer and has now been diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, and she wants to make the most of her remaining days with her family. So this campaign's been launched to help her to essentially sort of fulfil her bucket list.
Yeah.
Those are, and that's in the Walton Advertiser, those are meat and drink stories, aren't they, where you test how good a journalist is in interviewing someone, making them feel comfortable to talk to you and getting the real story, isn't it?
Exactly, and stories like that, she may walk past you in the street and you have no idea about her story. It's the good journalist who's been trained to actually go and ask these questions and find out that incredible story, which is a brilliant human interest story and all over the papers. And as you say, they treat it differently, but that kind of story will be in all the different papers, maybe with a slightly different angle.
Another one here that caught my attention. This campaign's been going on for a couple of weeks now. The Express and Star, this fight to save the Seven Stars pub in Sedgley. You could almost take the pub name out, take the town out, and you've got the same situation in so many towns and villages. Yeah. They thought they'd won the fight, then they've got this use it or lose it, then they've got somebody that wants to sell the land to developers because they think a supermarket can be built on it.
Yeah.
And this again is another classic test, isn't it, for a journalism student?
Definitely.
Get out into the community and find out what's on the mind, what's getting them
exactly.
hot under
We
the collar.
had actually from last year's cohort of students, we had a very, very similar story about a pub that they wanted to turn half of it into a co-op, and local residents had actually started a petition. So the student went there and interviewed them. He actually made a video about this as well, which you can see on our website as well. Made an interview with the people who'd launched the petition, people in the pub who didn't want it to change, the people who were trying to change that, put the planning application in, and all the details about it. And in fact, another student did a completely separate story about the same sort of thing while they were on work experience at the Sentinel in Stoke as well.
Yeah, and that just shows, one of the great abilities I always think with a story like this is that it's not just a one hit, it's an issue that's staying, and there are umpteen follow-up opportunities.
Yeah.
And it's making a journalist to think laterally, well, okay, if a supermarket wants to buy this pub, what does that mean to the people who live across the road?
Exactly.
Or there are different people, everyone's got an opinion, haven't they? And that's what the best stories are, the ones with more than one opinion.
Definitely.
And you need to get each one of those opinions together, haven't
it's
you?
the local person on the street, like you say. What does it mean for them, or your local MP, councillors as well? What do they think it will do to trade in the area? The businesses nearby, what do they think? And then a planning application may go in, so then you need to follow it up with what you've learnt in our public affairs module about how to get a planning application, details, can you find them online, that sort of thing, and how it happens.
Yeah. And public notices in newspapers are great as well, aren't they?
Oh,
Little
I
snippets.
love a public notice.
You can always find a story. They ask more questions than they answer, don't
They
they?
They do. In the newspaper or in the supermarket, do they still happen? Things in the side of the supermarket, or the village notice board as well. Yep. Classic.
Now, I know you'll be too modest to mention this, but you are an award-winning journalism tutor, aren't you? So tell me about that.
We are the only NCTJ accredited course within a fair amount of geographical distance. And last year we were named the best performing UK FE college for this diploma across the UK as a whole. So we had the best exam marks across the whole of the UK for this diploma. And last year we won that, and it happened to be the 4th year in a row that we have actually won that accolade.
So does that mean fabulous lecturers or brilliantly intelligent students, or both?
I presume it's a mix of both.
Because your background, you've worked in newspapers, you've worked in radio. How long have you been in the industry for then?
So I've been teaching around 2 years now. Before that, I worked at the Shropshire Star newspaper. So it was quite a rural patch for me. I was out in rural Shropshire, so it was quite different to some of the things that some of our students now see if they are on work experience at the Express and Star or in Birmingham or something like that. Before that, I worked at a radio station, community radio station, as news editor there as well. So I've got quite a bit of different experiences about how to write a story, because for your commercial radio station, I should say, is very different to how you would then write a page lead to go on the front of the Express and Star or Shropshire Star. So write slightly more for the newspaper.
Absolutely, and make sure it's all spelt properly.
Yes, of course.
So last question then, if people are interested in getting involved in the course, the new course is presumably just up and running, is it?
Yes.
Where do people find out more?
It's an academic year, so it starts at the beginning of September. They can find out more on the City of Wolverhampton College website. We've got a specific page there for our course, which will go into a lot more detail about those modules that I've mentioned and what you need to have as your background in order to get on the course. And the other way is just to contact me. We're on Twitter at nctjwolvcol, and they can email me direct, which they can find online as well. And in order to get on the course, they need to pass an entrance test because it is very competitive, not only because we are the award-winning best in the UK course, but because so many people want to be a journalist anyway. It's a competitive industry anyway. So there is an entrance test to go through, which I can put people at ease with, explain about that and go through that process.
Brilliant. We'll have you back in the studio when you get your 5th annual award. Danny, thank you very much. After the break, we'll be serving up some top money-saving tips with the help of a local independent financial advisor. Don't go away. Welcome back to The Week, the show which takes a look at some of the week's big talking points with a helping hand from our studio guests. Now, cinema is big business these days, and as I know only too well from hosting Big Centre TV's Brummywood Yammywood show, there's no shortage of movie fans or filmmakers in our region. So it's no surprise that excitement is building for the opening of a new Cineworld IMAX cinema as part of the National Exhibition Centre complex in Birmingham. Work is now well underway on the site, which is aiming to open in time to show the new James Bond film Spectre at the end of the month. Big Centre TV's Roshni Patel went along to pay a visit, just to warn you this does contain some flashing images.
There's a new landmark on the horizon in Birmingham, and this is getting geared up to be a part of the limelight. This new Cineworld will feature 11 new screens, including both IMAX and 3D screens, and its close proximity to what is said to be the biggest leisure and entertainment complexes in the UK and Western Europe will make that movie experience all the more special.
Oh, we're really excited to be here. I mean, this is our sort of 3rd cinema in the area now, so we're extremely excited with this particular build. As you can see, we're in the IMAX auditorium now, so this is our 2nd IMAX in the area. What's particularly exciting is this is our first sort of cinema that we've opened with Resorts World, so we are really, really excited. I mean, the transport links are excellent here, the parking's excellent, you know, there's a real buzz about the place, a real buzz about the the centre opening. We're really, really pleased to be part of this development.
The eagerly anticipated £150 million Resorts World development is set for visitors to burst through its doors this October.
Well, same with any development, you know, you have bits and pieces, go wrong, but we're on track. We are aiming towards opening for the new Bond release, Spectre, which is opening at the end of the month.
But it's not just the masses of movie-hungry fans that will be reaping the benefits of this new cinema.
Well, us ourselves, we've created it's closer to 70 jobs for not just the locals, but for other people in our company as well. But it's going to be amazing. We're really looking forward to getting the locals in and showing them all around it.
With only a matter of weeks before its opening, film fans won't have long to wait to get the most out of their cinematic experience. This is Roshni Patel for The Midland at the Cineworld Birmingham NEC.
Looking forward to that one, definitely. Well, of course, you can't go to the cinema without having disposable income in your pocket. So this is the perfect link into my next guest. Joining me now is John Booth from Oak County Financial Services, based in Shifnal near Wolverhampton. John, thank you for joining us. Are you a cinema goer?
I am, Carl.
A Bond fan, maybe?
I'm a Bond fan. Star Trek, the old Star Trek-y series. I love the new films, and also into just action movies.
Yeah, and then we're going to be talking gaming in a moment with our next guests. I'm looking at some of these, talking of action movies. There's some incredible things coming up. I'm from the era where it was Scrabble and it was Snakes and Ladders.
I have actually done some of this before, and it was actually all on boards with hexagonal positions and the rolling dice, and the actual gaming areas was probably about as big as the floor of the studio, and one of my games went on for 5 days.
Maybe you should come and host the next part of the show after the break rather than me. I'm fascinated to see what comes up here. Now, John, I mean, you're here to talk money with us, and barely a week goes by, really, without us seeing some kind of financial story in the press. Last week, we had a big, long chat about the pressure which students are finding to make ends meet when they go to university. But there are just long-standing issues, aren't there, in our region now, whether it's pensions, mortgages. Pensions in the news right now, aren't they? And what's the situation? Because it's changed so much. It seems that every 2 or 3 months there's a new little rule or regulation that comes out. And do we need to be on top of them all?
You've hit the nail on the head, Carl. Successive parliaments have radically changed pensions, and the good news is that the recent pension changes, we have really taken the lid off all the limitations that you could do. Pensions were always, when I speak to people about pensions, they say, yeah, it's great, I'm getting all this tax relief going in, but I can't access it until later on, and then when I can access it, I'm capped and collared by what I can actually take from it, or I have to buy one of these horrible things called an annuity, which everybody tells me is bad value for money. Now what's happened, just as a comparison, what you can take out of a pension is pretty much everything. You take your 25% tax-free cash, as you could with the old pension rules, but it's what's the remaining fund is left. Before, you were capped on the amount of money you could take, and you had to do reviews, and that cap was done every 3 years. Now it's a lot more simple. The lid has come off, and you can effectively, if you wanted to an extreme, you could take it out all in one lump sum.
This was the policy, wasn't it, where some of the critics were suggesting that it would encourage people to be maybe irresponsible with the money that they've saved going into their later years, or decide to splash out on the latest Lamborghini or whatever. It hasn't panned out to be that way.
It actually hasn't. Most people are actually, once they know they can do it, is the thing. I think that once they're told they can do it, the sensible people generally say, right, we'll leave it there and let it work for us, because fundamentally people know that they're not going to go out and blow. However, on our compliance side, we have had 60-year-old man wanting to buy a speedboat for his girlfriend, 35 years old, who likes water skiing, quarter share in a racehorse, half share in a Lamborghini. These are events, but they are in the market.
What do you say to people when they come up with you with suggestions like that?
Pretty much, we give very negative advice on those ideas. But it is their money. I mean, this is the Chancellor has said, it is your money. You can do what you want with it. I think there's also slightly vested interest in that it's going to boost the economy, and help a consumer-driven recovery. That's the bit I have a problem with. But most people, knowing they can do it is enough. The crucial issue is that they use it wisely, because to an extreme, it's like having a bank account now. You've had all the tax relief going in, and you can dip into it as and when your circumstances change.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? If you've been a responsible saver all your life, and if you've gone to the trouble of trying to plan for your own retirement, then the rules change. You're not suddenly going to have a schizophrenic change of personality and say, right, I'm splashing it all now on a villa in the south of France. You're just not in people's nature.
No, the rule changes have been entirely positive, and pensions now, also in other issues, terms of death benefit. Just to give you an example, pre the pension freedom rules, the death tax on a pension was a staggering 55%. So that's with the remaining fund that you haven't drawn down on. Now it's nothing. So there's a lot more money in that pot to actually carry forward to future generations. And and in terms of partnerships where there isn't a marriage or a civil partnership, you can actually now leave if you die before 75, you can actually leave that to anybody. So you can bypass generations.
Do you think people understand the changes?
No.
Do you think?
No, because their PensionWise has been set up, which is the advisory agency. You get a 45-minute tele-interview or face-to-face with citizens' advice, and whilst it's factual, it's not actually like sitting down with an advisor answering questions. I have seen some of the reports, and they are a bit like a key features document. There's not enough time for specifics. They only give generic advice.
And when we talk on this show, when we're looking at the newspaper headlines, people want bite-sized news these days, don't they? They don't digest a 6,000-word report. They want something in very simple bullet point terms that they can look at, digest and move on.
Absolutely. We have clients coming in to see us, and they say, I want to do this. These are the pensions I have. Can I do it? Is it achievable? What are the upsides and the downsides? And unfortunately, PensionWise don't have the remit to be specific in their advice. They give generic advice only. However, as a first point of call, Yeah, it's good. I think the take-up has been reasonable, and also the life companies as well are being quite good as well. Initially, they were scared to get involved and actually give any form of advice or help. So it was virtually the client was virtually shoehorned into going to see an advisor to get the advice signed off. Advisors were actually kind of reluctant to give the advice because this was a shock to everybody. Even the Inland Revenue didn't actually know about it. And there are some pitfalls with this. And it really is appertaining to the legacy schemes, the much older pensions, which don't have the flexibility, or didn't have the flexibility as some pensions with more specialist niche companies. So people are, and you hear this on the radio, people saying, well, I've rung up and they say I can't have the tax-free cash. It's not necessarily the fault of the provider, it's just that it was an old trust arrangement around the pension.
And it's tied into old rules.
And this is where it gets complicated, that you have to then transfer the old rules scheme into the new rules more flexible scheme in order to get the benefit. And of course there is advice required, and it's a highly regulated area.
The other area that's been in the news this week, really, and is always in the news it seems to me, is mortgages. You know, we had a couple of weeks about interest rates staying the same, have done for 6.5, whatever it is, years now.
Yes.
People are worried about house prices still growing faster than inflation. How can people get on the housing market, and are people getting the best mortgage that they can sensibly get access to? How do they know?
Okay, there's a lot of ways people can get good mortgages. Search engines, and there are also comparison sites. That would be first point of call. I think people need to sit and think carefully about the financing of the mortgage before they actually go out and have a look at the house. Because we tend to find a lot of people are going and saying, I want this house, I want this, how can we do it? What they should be looking about is sitting down with an advisor prior to the purchase and looking at a sensible assessment of your budget and what you can actually afford. The government are helping here with help to buy schemes, and there are actually three versions. There's the help to buy equity loan, and this is primarily because lenders don't like lending high levels of loan to value. They like customers to put big deposits. The best rates can be achieved when you're putting down a 40% deposit. Now that is nearly impossible. So this is where people have already got equity in the house and they're carrying it over to a new one. The loan to value, which means the amount they're borrowing compared to the whole equity, is about 60%. Lenders love these people because they can offer them all the nice rates you see in the papers. The reality of it is most people are on 80% or above, and ideally first-time buyers, because the size of the deposit you require, you're looking for 95s.
Yeah, that's where the headline grabbing figures, people just need to realise that there is a fair chance that actually they're not going to apply to you, aren't they? We could talk about mortgages all day, couldn't we, John? I'm going to have you back in the studio maybe next month to tackle a couple more issues. Thank you for coming in. Thank you very much. Time for another break now and to take in the latest headlines from the Big Centre newsroom. But stick with us, because when we return, we'll be getting the board games out under the watchful supervision of the team from Walsall Gaming Point. I can't wait to see what the good, the bad and the munchkin is all about. Don't go away. Welcome back. It's nearly time for us to get gaming, but before that, how do you fancy helping to make a local sportswoman's dreams come true? Kelda Wood works at the Battleback Centre in the West Midlands, and she's hoping to represent Great Britain at next year's Paralympics in Rio. She's training hard right now and hoping that with a helping hand from some corporate sponsors perhaps, her medal-winning dreams could soon come true. Kelda will be joining us in the studio in a couple of weeks when she takes a break from her training, but Big Centre TV caught up with her on location to find out more about her story and how things are progressing.
My name is Kelda Wood, and this is my chance to be part of Paralympic history. It's the first year that Paracanoe has ever been included in the Paralympics, and my target is to be the first ever female KL3 200 metre gold medalist. As a child, I dreamt of going to the Olympics. When I was 9 years old, I drew the Olympic rings on my bedroom wall. When I used to walk my dogs, I would stand on the top of a stile and sing the national anthem and pretend I'd just been presented with my gold medal. It'd always been my dream. Suddenly, I'm on the GB squad. We're talking about the Olympics. I've got a 1 in 3 chance of going. So I was haying the horses one morning at the stables and was moving hay around, and a bale of haylage that weighs about a tonne fell off the top of the stack, landed on my head and caused a compression injury. it looked like they were going to have to amputate my leg at the time. But I was fairly stubborn about not letting them do that straight away. I've got a fused left ankle joint and a degenerative joint, so I've got no mobility in that left ankle, so I can't run anymore. I can't do any of the sports that I used to do. Sport is everything that I'm about, really. I'm one of those people that I love to train hard, I love to work hard. I was never naturally good at sport, but I absolutely relish the challenge of getting good. I am paddling in a K1, which is flat water sprint kayaking, so 200 metres in a straight line as fast as you can. My personal best at the minute is 55.2 seconds. The world record is 49 seconds. So the fact that I've knocked 4 seconds off my time in the last 3 months, that 49 seconds is absolutely within my sights. Now on the GB Paracanoe squad, our end goal is Rio next year and the Paralympics, and it's the first year that Paracanoe's been included in the Paralympics, so it's quite a big event for us. GB are the leading nation, so I'm absolutely going for that gold medal. 12 months ago I hadn't even sat in a canoe, so it's been a pretty rapid journey. I won the bronze medal at the British Championships this year, so I'm ranked third in Britain. The aim is to establish myself as the first boat next year. I am chasing a dream that I've had for a very long time. And I can absolutely do it.
We'll be meeting Kelda in the studio in a couple of weeks' time just to find out how she's getting on. Right then, without further ado, we've been teasing this right from the top of the show. Let me introduce our final guests tonight. We've got Ben, Seth and James from Walsall Gaming Point. Now, their mission is to give local, like-minded people the chance to get together every weekend and play their favourite games. So, folks, thank you for joining us. I've been fascinated particularly by the good, the bad and the munchkin as keeps just attracting my attention. What's that one all about?
Munchkin is a game basically where it's a role-playing game to start with. Basically,
can we have a look?
Yeah, sure. Let's get. You take a board, not a very big one, albeit, and basically on this board is numbered 1 to 10's areas. I don't think we've got the board with us, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but
all right.
these cards basically are used in the game to grant rewards to would-be heroes. However, it puts a bit of a comedy twist onto the usual role-playing game systems that you see, so stuff like Dungeons and Dragons, for example, which is taken very seriously by the way that people play it. And so, for example, you get stuff like the 10-gallon hat.
Yeah.
The filthy syrup. So as you can see, it takes a bit more of a comedy twist onto
absolutely,
things.
yeah.
The dude wrench, for example.
Yeah, I'm liking the look at this one. I'm liking the look at
As you
this.
can see, it offers basically a bit more of a comedic value and a bit more fun play style as opposed to other games.
I mean, obviously, you've only bought a really small sample of some of the games that are involved in it. Just tell me about Walsall Gaming Point. How long have you been going for, and how did you form?
Walsall Gaming Point started about 4 years ago when the original owner of Bennett's, as it's been taken over by Brian Miller now, who's our sponsor.
Is that the one in the Victorian Arcade in Walsall?
The one that's located in the Victorian Arcade. The original owner, Kevin Bennett, approached us basically when we came up with an idea to start a gaming club, and talked about the possibility of sponsoring us due to the fact that a previous gaming club in Walsall had been faking results and basically faking partnerships, if you will, with affiliates that run the said games we see in front of us. And we're getting free promotional packs, free stuff basically sent to them.
Skullduggery going on, was there? Right,
yeah,
okay.
certainly. Right. And as you can imagine, for that reason, they wanted to make sure we were very legitimate before they gave us anything, and so they asked us to go and find a partner in crime, being Bennett's, of course. And that's basically how the club started. We started every 2 weeks on a Saturday at first in the Walsall Library, and then once we'd located a bigger area to go to, which was the Hatherton Church, we started doing it every week on a Saturday. And then eventually we found ourselves in the Vine Centre, originally in the Gold Mine Centre, the bigger hall. We were moved to the Vine Centre when that was taken for special events and stuff like that. But we found it a bit more accommodating in the Vine Centre as such, because it's used as a youth club usually, you see, so it feels a bit more homey and such to this sort of thing. And yeah, basically for the last sort of 4 years I've been doing the same, encouraging the community to come along and get involved in games and basically just come and meet up and have a laugh, if you will.
Yeah. So Ben, how long have you been involved with it?
I've been part of the community since last November, was it, I started?
Yeah.
And what provoked you to join them?
I went into Bennett, I had money at the time and I thought, I'm going to buy something that I haven't had in years since I was back at school. And I thought, and Brian, the person who runs Bennett, says there's a club round the corner meeting on a Saturday. I'm open at 11 till 3. 11 till 3 on a Saturday. Why did you go down and have a look? And I went in, and first person I saw here was Seth and James, and they was really accommodating. And since then I've been there every week.
Is this, James, is this one of the problems maybe that you've got, that a lot of people are out there and would love to be involved in this and they don't know that you exist?
Yeah, very much. We find that even unless they've been around, let's say, the area now, for example, the Victoria Arcade or Walsall, or been interesting games to start with, it's very unknown to people. So we try and get adverts out, we try and approach people or get people from the shop, because obviously Bennett's selling the games, it generates a lot of interest for us. So that's why we're here today, so obviously get more people to want to come down and play. We
spend a lot of time, I mean, we always do a little section on this show called Something for the Weekend, where the idea is we're trying to encourage people who might just have a bit of time to spare to go out, do something a bit different, whether it's go to the cinema, go to the theatre. It's all about getting out and going out, rather than sat in front of a tablet or a computer screen. That presumably is one of the big appeals to this, isn't it? Because you've got great camaraderie, I imagine.
We host for a wide variety of ages, to be honest with you. Our youngest, would you say 8, 7?
8.
Joe? But we have about 7, 8-year-olds that attend the club, and they get involved in these card games. And to be honest with you, sometimes they're even too young to know how the card game works, but they just like the interaction with other people and getting excited about, you know, for example, the Pokemon card games especially. That tends to draw in a lot of the younger generation, because they have the connection to DS games. So they feel comfortable sitting around playing with these Pokemon, and even if they lose, you see a lot of, oh well, let's just go again, let's play again, and it's very warming to see. And like I say, the community is very solid as such. It's just the unfortunate thing is not everyone quite knows about it yet, and that's the problem. So
I mean, obviously this is a great opportunity, a showcase for you guys to sell what you do. What happens on a typical night? How does it work?
So Friday Night Magic basically is more specialist towards the Wizards products, so stuff like Dungeons and Dragons, for example, and Magic the Gathering at the Frontier. Basically on those nights we focus around getting more interest in these two games, so we get people down, they can have a free introductory deck, so you know, it's only 30 cards, but it's something to start the game with. We can teach you how to play, get you involved in tournaments, ranked play, casual, league play, which, as you can imagine, gets you knowing people and ups the interest a bit more, not just for yourself, but getting a lot of people who are doing the same thing as you makes it a bit more, you become a bit more willing to get involved in it and stuff, you know what I mean?
So,
whereas...
do you have inter-club competitions then? Is that how it works? And then into league competitions, do you compete with other...
At the moment, we don't have many inter-club. We were focusing towards it, unfortunately. That's fell through a little bit. But there are leagues that the actual companies themselves do. So, for example, Wizards have their own league set up that you can go and do events, and they'll post like events for worldwide or nationals. So it does get quite big scale. Same with Yu-Gi-Oh! And same with Pokemon. So there are big events that come out of just little clubs like ours.
So basically making more clubs in separate areas, like sort of on the 3-year scale, we're looking to open up a club maybe in Wolverhampton and one in Dudley.
Then there are not clubs like this in there at the moment?
There are other places basically, so stuff like I'd think Blackborder Games, Chimera, stuff like that. There are other clubs that basically operate in those areas, but we're looking more to expand our club into those areas, and then we can do sort of inter-club meetings and stuff. So Dudley can host their own tournaments, and Wolverhampton can host their own tournaments. Also, it makes it a bit more approachable for the children in those areas. They don't have to travel to Walsall to get involved in this. And then it allows us to host sort of inter-club tournaments, and allows us to let these communities interact with each other on either a friendly or a competitive scale, because as you know, there are people out there that prefer to game differently. So yeah, say certainly. So.
I'm imagining, I mean, I'm drawing a bit of a comparison here, and tell me if I'm wrong, between you know, when you're playing pub games, if it's dominoes, if it's darts, if it's pool, they can get a bit heated, they can get a bit competitive.
Yeah. Definitely.
Do you see that? I can see the smiles on all of your faces now.
Certainly.
Tell me about the incidents you've come across then. I'll start from the left.
When playing Magic, at the moment, there's a certain set of cards, certain deck that I find really infuriating, and one of our members just happens to play it, and he'll get you down to the last legs, and he just ends it like that, and there's no showsmanship, there's nothing like that. It's just very aggravating to know that you can't do anything about it, and when you get beaten, you're going to know about it.
Are you good at keeping your composure at a moment like that then, are you?
Yeah. It's around the younger members, you've got to keep your composure, because what's the words?
You're setting an example, aren't you?
Yeah, presenting an example, very impressionable. So normally, when you get back home or go out with your mates afterwards, it's like, I wish that
person.
Yes, I wish you'd go away.
That's admirable of you, Seth. What about you? What's the biggest flashpoint you've encountered, either as an observer or a player?
I've observed more than played, to be honest with you, because running the communities, it's a bit demanding from sort of running the event sort of scale. So, for example, when you're hosting the tournaments, you have reporting systems you have to keep up track with. You know, you have set time limit on rounds, and basically that's more of my job in the gaming point. It's to make sure that these reports go through to the companies and that they're keeping track of what we're doing, so that they know we're not just taking cards from them and playing them around. Well, in one such event, we had a group from Dudley who came down to join in with the event, and it was in this very building, I remember it. Basically, one of the members, who was pretty much a staple member of our group, basically, was just getting abused by him. And as much as you try to sort of... it's always been my sort of approach on these matters, that if you were to turn around and say to a kid they couldn't have something, the reaction you would get from, say, like a 5-year-old from telling them they can't have something is much less than the reaction you get from telling a grown man to calm down and stop being the way they are. So, you know what I mean? It just got a bit edgy, and it was just, unfortunately, had to make him leave. So, you know, you see those things all the time.
But you see, in small doses, passion and things like that are great, aren't they? Yeah. Because, you know, you want people to be really committed, really interested. You want it to matter to people, don't you? So, what about you then? I could see you smiling. There's a story that's sprung straight to mind with you, isn't there?
Ironically, the best person to say for me, Jay, to sort of tell my stories, because I'm usually the one causing some of them, I must admit.
Oh, I see. Oh, he's a troublemaker, is he?
It's not so much that he's a troublemaker, it's just... I'd say when James gets involved in his games, he gets involved at a very sort of passionate level, and not so much passionate level where it's the desire to win and the desire to do it, anything regarding that. It's he gets involved in his game and submerses himself in what it is.
Tunnel vision person,
exactly.
Aren't you?
Sometimes the interaction with people gets a bit, but
you know,
again,
people will be trying to talk to him and say like, oh, you know, how are you doing and stuff like that, and he's just like, don't care, go away. So you do get a little bit of that every now and then with the way people play, because they get a bit into the game and stuff like that. But the most important thing is, in our community, there's a very high amount of friendliness and approachableness.
It's the same as playing sport, isn't it? You play football, exactly. you kick lumps out of each other for 90 minutes, then you go and have a pint afterwards. It's exactly the same sort of thing. Tell me what we've got here then. I mean, I've spotted this. We've got Star Trek and Star Wars here, haven't we? So what are these from?
Right, so do you want to explain the X-Wing?
I've not really played X-Wing, so you
haven't?
Not yet. You've got to show me about it.
Right, okay. So we'll start with the Star Wars first.
This is Star Wars, isn't it? This is
the
the Imperial Troopers, isn't it?
Yes, right, okay, so what we've got here basically is a TIE Defender, if I can remember correctly. Basically, what happens in these sorts of games is you may notice the knobbles at the front of the base just here. So basically you use cardboard templates, which I don't have at the moment, unfortunately, but basically you place these cardboard templates and you perform a movement depending on what the template does. So these templates might gear to the left or to the right, or might move straight forward, and you just move the model according to the template. And you take it in turns to move your models around on your turn, and basically use dice to determine the outcome for damage. And effectively it allows you to sort of determine how battles are. For example, if you want to do a battle where Luke was attacking the Death Star again, and you wanted to sort of work how it happened, and allows you to sort of determine your own outcomes with those sort of games. It allows you to immerse yourself into a newer side of the what we like to call the fluff, the background, the lore,
background.
if you will, into the game. So you learn more about the side storylines, things that were happening in the shadows of what is the movie, if you know what I mean. So
because there's so, I mean, the gaming industry is one of the areas that's capitalised brilliantly on all the spin-offs from the big movie franchises now, hasn't it? I mean,
for example, you've got a lot with regards to said Star Wars and Star Trek. You've got a lot of named characters which you've never seen in the movies, but they're in all the books. They're all in everywhere else. They're used all over the place, and those sort of characters come to life in those kind of games.
How often then are you having to integrate new games? I mean, you know, we have a new movie come out every week. In the summer blockbusters, you've got obviously Star Trek, Star Wars, the big franchises. There's Game of Thrones is massive. Does it all link in, you know, with the changing face of the game?
The way we tend to work it quite simply is if you bring it, we'll play it. So if there's one person in the community that turns around and goes, I really want to play this with somebody, they bring it up, they show us, because it ain't always the case we're aware on these things. You know, some people will be like, oh, I really like playing, for example, we got someone drop the Judge Dredd card game the other week, and it was just like, I've never heard of it. It was like, oh, it was released in the 90s, I don't think you'd have been around then, you know. It make them sort of, oh, I don't think you'd have understood, you know, you've been around and stuff like that, you've got to get it and we'll play it. So he came back in with a few of the cards and we ended up playing it. It was a lot of fun. So basically, bring it. If people want to play it.
And do people have to bring games with them then, or what have you actually got as a club?
Well, this is just a small part of the collection. We've got quite a large amount of different items that people could play. For example, we've got decks for Magic that we can lend, that we will be willing to play with you or lend out or play. 40k even. You've already seen the models there, which look pretty quite nice. We've got I've got a couple of armies myself, so I'm quite happy to sit around and say, I'll teach you how to play, I'll play you a game, I'll lend you things to play with.
So it's not a case of, you know, if people are interested in coming along just to find out what you're about, they just need to bring themselves, is that really?
We do, at the moment, we're doing a promotion where we're putting flyers around Walsall and surrounding areas, and we're saying if you bring this flyer, you can attend for your first time for free and just come and see what it's about and endorse yourself in, basically, you know, endorsing what it is we do and just have some fun. And there's been many an occasion where we've had younger children show up and they've been like, I like the look of this game, but I don't have anything. And people have quite literally just handed, like, I mean, the price of these cards sometimes, for example, like Magic especially, or Yu-Gi-Oh, the smaller card game near the Star Trek models there, the decks tend to go up to £300-400 sometimes, and people in our club sometimes have been known just to hand across £300-400 decks and go, well, come and play. You know, even if those children don't come back, they're off somewhere else playing with that deck, and that's sort of what we promote in our club. It's nice we get people in this community.
Which is excellent.
We're all about having fun. That's what we want.
So essentially, Fridays and Saturdays, anyone interested, come along and find you. Gents, thanks for coming in. We must come in again and talk more. That's all we've got time for, I'm afraid, this week, though. Thanks very much to my three guests here, plus John Booth and Danny Wozencroft. Don't forget, the Big Centre News team are with you every weekday, bringing you the latest headlines from across the Birmingham and Black Country region. We'll be back next Friday to pick through more of the West Midlands headlines.